His hand hovered over mine for 3 seconds before he touched me. Those 3 seconds said more than any kiss ever could. I'd been on the field for almost 2 hours. It wasn't even an official practice anymore. Just a habit, a way to clear my head after classes. The sun hung low, burning orange across the grass, and sweat slid down my spine in thin, sticky lines. I didn't realize how tired I was until I bent to grab the football again, and my breath got stuck halfway out of my chest. That's when I heard someone shouting my name. Jaden. Hey Jay, over here. I straightened and squinted toward the bleachers. Only a few people were around, but the voice was impossible to miss. Jack always had that half-serious, half-teasing tone, like he was calling a dog, but pretending it was for something important. He stood with one hand cupped around his mouth, still wearing that gray hoodie he practically lived in. The hood was halfway up, like he couldn't decide if he was cold or not. When he saw me turn, he waved me over sharply. Bro, come on. Quit running around and get here. I grabbed my water bottle, slung my bag over my shoulder, and jogged toward him. The closer I got, the more I realized something was wrong. Jack wasn't joking the way he usually did when he pulled me away from practice. He looked thoughtful, focused, almost like he'd been standing there waiting for a while. What's up? I asked, still catching my breath. Jack looked me up and down, eyebrows lifting at the dirt streaked across my arms and the dried sweat on my neck. Dude, you're a mess. Thanks, I said. Really needed the update. He didn't laugh. Not in a mean way, just like his mind wasn't on the joke this time. He ran a hand through his hair, then pointed a thumb over his shoulder. Come back to the dorm with me. I blinked. Everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine. But he said it too fast, like he wanted to skip to the next sentence. Just come on. You need to shower before you touch anything in the room. You look like you rolled down a hill. That's basically what practice feels like, I muttered. Jack's lips twitched, the closest he'd come to a smile since I saw him. All the more reason. He started walking before I could reply, leaving me no choice but to follow him off the field. I kept waiting for him to explain why he was even there. He rarely watched me practice unless he was really bored. But he stayed quiet, hands shoved into his hoodie pocket, head slightly down, like he was carefully thinking something through. When we reached the path to our dorm building, I nudged him lightly with my elbow. You sure everything's cool? You came all the way out here. He shrugged. Yeah, it just felt like grabbing you early. Then, with an offhand tone that didn't match the glint in his eyes, he added, also, I'm taking a shower, so you might as well jump in too. I nearly tripped. What? Jack stopped at the door, turned to me like he hadn't said anything strange, and repeated, we can just shower together. Saves time. There's a lot of hot water right now. Later it runs cold. You know how it is. I stared at him, trying to figure out if he was messing with me. Jack wasn't shy, and we'd lived together long enough not to be weird about stupid stuff. But showering together? That was new. Very new. You're serious? I asked. He shrugged again, eyes meeting mine for a moment before flicking away. Yeah, I mean, unless you want to smell like the whole football field for the rest of the night. I couldn't tell if he was nervous or just casually weird in that strange Jack way. He didn't wait for an answer. He went inside, and I followed, my heart beating faster than I wanted to admit. Our dorm room felt warmer than usual when we stepped in, like the heating had been running too long. I dropped my bag on my bed while Jack closed the door with his heel, pulling off his hoodie in one smooth motion. He tossed it aside, revealing a simple black t-shirt underneath, slightly lifted on one side from the movement. You're dripping dirt, he said, nodding at the trail I'd probably left on the floor. You dragged me here. Yeah, he replied, already pulling off his wristwatch. Come on. He walked into the small bathroom and turned on the shower. Steam started filling the space almost instantly. I could hear the pipes humming, water hitting the tiled floor. Jack didn't look back at me until he tested the temperature with his fingers. Hot enough, he said. Something about how calm he acted made the whole thing feel less weird, but somehow more intense. I wasn't sure why my chest felt tight, but the feeling was definitely there. He finally looked at me, really looked at me, eyes trailing down my arms covered in dried sweat and dust. "You need this," he said softly, like it wasn't a joke anymore. The room went quiet. Too quiet. I swallowed, nodded, and joined him in the bathroom. The heat from the steam wrapped around us, thick and humid. Jack pulled his shirt over his head, muscles shifting under his skin, and hung it on the hook near the door. I didn't know where to look or how to breathe or why the air felt so different. "You good?" Jack asked, glancing at me with an unreadable expression. "Yeah," I managed. "Just tired." He nodded once, slow, thoughtful. Then he stepped into the shower first, letting the water soak his hair and shoulders. He looked relaxed, like this was the most normal thing in the world. "Come on," he said over the sound of the water. "You're up." My heart thudded. I stepped in beside him. The water hit my back in a hot stream, washing away dirt, but replacing it with something else entirely. Something thicker, heavier. A tension I could feel in the space between us. Jack stood close enough that his shoulder almost touched mine. His breaths were barely audible under the spray. "See?" he said after a moment. "Not weird, just practical." But his voice wasn't steady, and his eyes lingered a beat too long when he looked over at me again. Something in me, something small, something I didn't want to think about, noticed everything. I reached for the soap, hands trembling slightly. Jack didn't miss it. He tilted his head gently, like he was trying to understand me without asking anything aloud. The water kept falling, the steam rising, the silence stretching between us like a line we hadn't crossed yet, but felt dangerously close to. For reasons I couldn't fully explain, I knew this wasn't just about saving time. Jack wanted me here with him right now, and I didn't know whether that terrified me or made my pulse race in a way I'd never felt before. The water hit the tiles in a steady rhythm, a soft echoing sound that made the small bathroom feel even smaller. Steam blurred the walls and the edges of Jack's shoulders, softening everything except the sharp, strange awareness building inside me. I couldn't tell if it was the heat or him, but I felt warm all over, almost lightheaded. Jack ran a hand through his wet hair, pushing it back, droplets sliding down his neck. When he looked at me again, his eyes dropped briefly, just a tiny flicker, like he was taking in how the water ran down my arms over the dirt and sweat still clinging to me. "You want soap?" he asked, voice low, casual but not really casual at all. "Yeah," I said, though the word came out rougher than I meant. He reached for the bottle on the shelf above us, but his fingers brushed mine because I reached at the same time. Just the tips, barely anything. But the second it happened, something shot through me, like nerves waking up too fast. Jack pulled his hand back slowly. Not fast like he was startled. Slow like he felt it too. "You go first," he murmured. I squeezed soap onto my hand and started rubbing it across my arm, pretending everything was normal, pretending my heartbeat wasn't climbing into dangerous territory. The scent, clean, subtle, filled the warm air. The heat made my skin feel too sensitive. Every drop of water felt as clear as a new memory. Behind me, Jack shifted slightly under the spray. My back was turned, but I could feel him there, close, watching me like he wanted to say something but couldn't decide if he should. After a moment, he cleared his throat. "Hey, give me that." I turned to hand him the bottle, but instead of taking it, he took my wrist. My breath caught. He didn't grip hard, just gently, enough to steady my hand while he slid the soap bottle out of it. The touch lasted only a second, maybe less, but it felt like time stopped long enough for me to understand that something was starting. something neither of us had planned for. Jack squirted soap into his palm, rubbed his hands together, then gave me a look I couldn't decode. A look that made my stomach twist. "Turn around," he said quietly. My throat tightened. "Why?" "I'm helping you wash your back," he said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "You can't reach properly, and you look like you wrestled a mud monster out there." He tried to sound light, joking, but I could hear it. The slight unsteadiness. The same thing I felt. I turned slowly. Hot water hit my chest while my back faced him. For a second, nothing happened. Just the sound of the water and the beating in my ears. Then I felt his hand. Warm, careful, steady. He started at my shoulder blades, spreading the soap in smooth circles. His touch wasn't rough or playful, just gentle. Too gentle. Gentle enough to make the air feel heavier. I exhaled without meaning to. Jack paused. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Yeah," I answered, though my voice betrayed me. He continued down my back, across my spine. The soap made his touch glide easily, smooth and soft. Every movement sent a little shiver through me, and I prayed he couldn't see it. At one point, his thumb accidentally brushed the side of my ribs. My whole body reacted like it was electricity. Jack froze again, but he didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers lingered just a second too long before moving back up. Slower this time. "Sorry," he murmured. "Didn't mean to." "It's okay," I said quickly. "You're fine." But he wasn't fine, and neither was I. He kept washing my back until there was nothing left for him to reach. Nothing except the space lower, where the curve of my waist met the top of my hips. His hand drifted close to it, not touching, not crossing any line, just hovering there, like even he wasn't sure if he meant to or not. I felt it, the hesitation, the pull, the breath he held. Then his hand moved a little lower, just a little, not crossing anything inappropriate, not touching anything wrong, but definitely crossing an emotional line we'd never talked about, never acknowledged. My breath stopped. Jack did too. He slowly pulled his hand away, stepping back just enough for cool air to replace the heat of him. "Jaden," he whispered, like he just realized something dangerous. I turned around. Water dripped from my hair into my eyes. Jack stood there, soap still on his hands, chest rising and falling a little too fast. He looked at me like he didn't trust himself to speak. "I didn't mean," he started, then shook his head. "I don't know what I'm doing." "You didn't do anything," I said, though the tension between us made the words come out painfully soft. Jack swallowed hard. His eyes kept falling to my face, then briefly to my shoulders, then back up. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by something raw, something real. He looked down, rubbed his hands together under the water, rinsing off the soap. Just let me help with your hair. You've got dirt in it." Before I could respond, he stepped closer, close enough that our shoulders nearly touched. He reached up, fingers sliding into my hair, lathering shampoo through it slowly, carefully. Felt intimate, too intimate. His hands massaged small circles into my scalp, and my body reacted again before I could stop it. A soft exhale, barely there. Jack heard it. I knew he did. His breathing changed, shallow, uneven. "I'm not hurting you, right?" he asked.
No, y whispered.
He kept going, fingers threading through my hair, moving in gentle strokes that felt nothing like friendship. The warm water, the steam, the closeness. It all blurred together into something thick and unspoken. When he finally rinsed the shampoo out, his hand trailed down to my neck, thumb grazing the back of it. Gently, too gently. I didn't move. Neither did he. The water fell between us like a curtain we were standing behind, hidden from the rest of the world. Jack's voice was barely a whisper when he said, Jaden, this is getting, I don't know. He looked lost, conflicted, like he wanted to step away, but something in him refused. I swallowed hard. Do you want me to stop? His eyes shot up to mine. No, he said instantly, then quieter, almost frightened of the truth in his own voice.
No.
I don't want you to stop. We stood there under the water, inches apart, hearts pounding, both pretending we knew what we were doing when neither of us did. Something had changed. Not with words, not with anything physical, but with a touch so small it shouldn't have mattered. Except it did. It meant everything. The water kept falling between us, warm and steady, but everything inside me felt the opposite. Sharp, unsteady, shaking. Jack stood just inches away. Drops collected on his eyelashes, sliding down the curve of his jaw, disappearing into the steam. I'd seen him after workouts, after practice, after late-night runs. But I'd never seen him like this. Never seen him look at me like this. His breaths came shallow, uneven, as if he was fighting something inside himself. Something he didn't have a name for. Maybe I didn't either. The steam made the air heavy, thick, hard to breathe. Or maybe it wasn't the steam. It was Jack. The way he kept searching my eyes like he was trying to read a language he'd never studied but somehow already knew by heart. Jaden, he started, voice rough and unsure. I don't know what's happening right now. He ran a hand through his wet hair, then let it fall back to his side. His fingers twitched like they wanted to reach for me again but didn't know if they should. I swallowed hard. Do you want me to step back? He hesitated. Too long for a simple yes. Too long for a simple no. His eyes flicked to my lips for half a second before he caught himself. No, he said quietly. I don't. The truth in his voice hit me like heat. Then he looked down, almost embarrassed, like the admission had slipped out before he could stop it. Jack was never embarrassed. Not about anything. But right now he looked vulnerable. Exposed. Unsure. Jack, I whispered. Talk to me. I can't, he said, shaking his head. Not when I don't even understand it myself. I felt something in my chest twist, gently but painfully. He wasn't avoiding me. He was avoiding himself. He took a small step backward, leaning a shoulder against the wet tile wall, as if he needed something solid behind him. Water cascaded over his skin, trailing down the lines of muscle he usually hid under hoodies and t-shirts. He looked down at his hands, flexing them slowly like they'd betrayed him. You're my roommate, he murmured. My friend. This, whatever's happening, it shouldn't be happening. But it is, I said softly. His eyes snapped up, filled with something raw. Yeah, he breathed. It is. The distance between us felt electric. Charged, like every inch of air was holding its breath. Jack pushed his tongue against the inside of his cheek, thinking, a nervous habit he did when he tried to hide emotions. You've never felt something you didn't mean to? He asked, voice shaky. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was too real. More times than I'll ever admit. He huffed a breath, water dripping from his chin. I'm not this kind of guy, Jaden. What kind of guy? The kind who stands in a shower with another guy. He stopped himself, jaw clenching as he looked away. I don't even know what I'm feeling. He wasn't lying. His confusion was written all over him. I took one step closer, not touching, just close enough that he could feel my presence. His breath caught instantly. Jack, I said, my voice barely above the sound of the water. You don't have to name it. You don't have to figure it out right now. He swallowed hard. But you're feeling something. His eyes flicked to mine again. Quick, scared, desperate. Yeah, he whispered. I am. The confession hung in the steam, warm and dangerous. The shower spray shifted slightly, hitting my shoulder and his side, blurring the line between our bodies. Jack looked down at my hand, just my hand, like it was the most terrifying thing in the world. Slowly, he lifted his own hand. He didn't touch me. He just hovered near mine, close enough that the space between our fingers felt like it hummed. "Why is this happening?" he asked, voice cracking just a little. "Because you wanted to," I said softly. His breath stuttered. Then his fingers brushed mine, barely, like the softest possible question. "Jaden," he murmured. "Yes," I breathed. He closed his eyes like the answer hit deeper than he expected. When he opened them again, something in him had changed. Small, subtle, but undeniable. His shoulders relaxed, no longer tense with denial. His jaw softened. His eyes were full of something he'd been hiding for too long, maybe even from himself. He stepped forward, just one slow step. The heat of his body, the warmth of his breath, the closeness. It all rushed into me at once. He lifted a hand and touched my jaw, thumb grazing my cheekbone. Soft, careful, scared. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, almost begging. I couldn't. Instead, I leaned in that slight inch he needed. His forehead pressed against mine, wet hair dripping between us. His breathing tangled with mine, two uneven rhythms trying to become one. His hand cupped my jaw, firmer now, like he'd finally allowed himself to want. Then, I don't know if he moved first or if I did. All I know is that his lips brushed mine, barely, lightly trembling. A touch so soft it hardly counted as a kiss, but it was more powerful than any kiss I'd ever imagined. My spine tingled, my stomach flipped. Every thought in my head vanished, replaced by the warm, careful pressure of him. Jack froze, not pulling away, not leaning in, just frozen in the shock of what he'd done. I opened my eyes slowly. His were squeezed shut, like he was terrified to see what he'd done, terrified to see my reaction. "Jack," I whispered against his lips. "It's okay." He exhaled shakily, breath brushing across my mouth. "I shouldn't have," he whispered. "But you did." I paused. "And I want to again." He admitted it, voice trembling. My heart nearly stopped before I could respond. He tilted his head and kissed me again. This time fully, softly, carefully, like he was still afraid he might break something. The kiss wasn't rushed, wasn't desperate, wasn't wild. It was gentle, searching, full of questions. A confession wrapped in warmth and confusion. When he finally pulled back, he kept his hand on my jaw, thumb still resting lightly on my cheek. He looked into my eyes with something that scared him, but drew him in anyway. "What are we doing?" he whispered. "I don't know," I said truthfully. "But we're doing it together." He exhaled, shaky, but relieved. The line between us, the line we'd never crossed, was gone now. Not shattered, just quietly stepped over. Jack looked down, then up, then back down, like he was still trying to convince himself this was real. "This isn't me," he said softly. "It is right now," I replied. He nodded slowly, accepting it, accepting himself, accepting me. The shower kept falling around us, warm and steady, like it was washing away everything we thought we knew about ourselves. Whatever this was, whatever we were becoming, started here, with a touch neither expected, with a kiss that shouldn't have happened, with a moment we couldn't take back. The second the kiss broke, the world felt too loud. Not because of noise, there wasn't any, but because my heartbeat was pounding so hard it filled every inch of the quiet space. Jack stepped back like he'd been shocked, his chest rising and falling, water still dripping from the ends of his hair onto the tile. His eyes were stuck on mine, searching for something he didn't even have words for. I didn't know what to say either. I'd never seen him look unsure before. Not like this. Not the way his fingers kept flexing at his sides. Like they couldn't decide whether to reach for me again or shove themselves into his pockets and pretend none of this happened. Jaden, he finally said. Even my name came out like a question. I know, I whispered back. It was all I could manage. I didn't trust myself to say more. One wrong word, and the moment would shatter, either into something too real or something we both pretended away. He swallowed hard, glanced down, then turned off the shower behind us, even though neither of us remembered leaving it running. I didn't mean to, he started. But the way he looked at my lips again told me that wasn't the full truth. It's okay, I said. Jack, it's...
No.
He shook his head fast. It's not. You didn't ask for that. I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking the same thing I was. That stopped him cold. His shoulders eased the tiniest bit, and I watched him breathe out slowly, like he'd been holding his breath since the moment our mouths touched. But the panic didn't fully leave him. It stayed in the tight set of his jaw, the stiffness in his posture, the way he kept looking everywhere except directly at me for too long. I grabbed a towel and wrapped it around my waist, partly because the chill of reality was beginning to creep in, and partly because I needed something grounding. Something that wasn't his lips burned into mine. Jack's voice softened. Jaden, we shouldn't have crossed that line. Maybe he was right. Maybe he wasn't. But I didn't want him shutting down on me. Not like this. Not after what just happened and what it clearly meant. Hey, I said gently. Look at me. He hesitated. Then did. There it was. The look that ruined my ability to breathe. Not confusion. Not regret. Wanting. He was terrified of it, but it was there. And because he wouldn't say it, I did the only thing that made sense. I walked past him, brushing his arm lightly on purpose, and headed to the living room. Come here, I said. He followed. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. The wooden floor was warm under my feet as I moved toward the long couch near the window. The sun was barely setting, soft orange leaking through the curtains, painting everything in a glow that made the room feel smaller, safer. When I sat down, Jack stood across from me, hands on his hips, eyes flickering from me to the floor to anywhere else. Sit, I said quietly. He dropped onto the couch beside me like gravity had finally won. Jack, talk to me. Tell me what's actually going on in your head. He looked away again. I don't know how to explain it. I don't do stuff like that. I don't know why He rubbed his palms together, frustrated. Why it felt like I needed to. The word hit me. Needed. He didn't even realize he'd said it. I reached out. My hand hovered close to his knee. Not touching. Just close enough that he could pull away if he wanted to. He didn't. His breath hitched. Barely noticeable, but enough. You're scared, I said softly. He didn't deny it. I don't know what this is, he admitted, or what it's supposed to mean. When I saw you like that earlier, the way you looked at me, he exhaled shakily. Jaden. Something just shifted. The room fell quiet. I could have let the silence stretch forever. But then Jack surprised me. I think I need to feel grounded, he said. I feel like I'm spinning. I blinked. Okay, what helps you with that? He thought for a moment. Back when I played ball on game days, my shoulders would tense up bad. Real bad. Coach used to make us get massages before warm UPS. It always helped. Just something steady. Something physical that made me feel like I was back in my body again. I didn't know where he was going with this, or why he suddenly seemed embarrassed. Are you asking me to? I lifted an eyebrow. No, he said too fast, then corrected himself. Maybe. I don't know. He rubbed his temple, eyes closing briefly. I'm not trying to be weird. It helped back then. And right now, I feel like if I don't calm down, I'm going to lose it. I nodded slowly, understanding more than I expected to. All right, I said softly. Turn around. He blinked. What? Turn around. You said it helped your shoulders. I can do that. You don't have to. I know. He hesitated, then shifted until his back was facing me. And suddenly, the space between us felt charged again. Not like before. Not electric, but warm, intimate, quiet. I placed my hands on his shoulders gently at first. He tensed, then relaxed so fast it felt like a quiet confession. His skin was still warm from the shower, and each breath he took seemed to melt another layer of tension. My thumbs moved slowly over the knots along his shoulder blades, and he let out a soft sound, barely audible but real. Jaden. A pause. Yeah, that feels good. His voice dropped a little, like the admission itself was heavy. I kept my movements slow, careful, steady, the sort of touch he could pull away from at any second. But he didn't. Instead, he leaned back just slightly, just enough that his spine brushed my knee. Not enough to cross a line, just enough to say he trusted me. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was his breathing. Deep, slow, steady. My hands traveled down to the center of his back, fingertips tracing the firm muscle there. His breath caught, and even though he pretended not to notice, his body told me everything. He wasn't just calming down. He was opening up. Jack, I said quietly. You okay? He nodded, eyes still closed. Better than before. You sure you're not uncomfortable? No, he whispered. I actually don't want you to stop. Something in my chest tightened. Not lust, not even desire, just warmth. The kind of warmth that only comes when someone lets you touch the parts of them they don't show anyone. I moved my hands up again, fingers brushing the back of his neck, and he shivered before he could stop himself. Sorry, he murmured. Don't apologize, I whispered back. Another silence stretched, softer this time, like the kind that didn't need words. Then Jack said something so quietly I almost missed it. I don't get why this feels safe. I froze. Not because he'd said it, but because he meant it. And that changed everything. Jack, I said softly, can I ask you something? He opened his eyes but didn't turn around. Yeah. When we kissed, did it scare you because it happened? Or because you liked it? He didn't breathe for a full second. Then another. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. Because I liked it. And just like that, the last bit of space between us dissolved. Not physically, but emotionally. The walls he'd spent his whole life keeping up didn't just crack. They opened. He finally turned slowly, his eyes finding mine with a vulnerability I'd never seen in him before. Jaden, he said. And the way he said my name, soft, quiet, like it held a truth he was afraid to say, made my chest feel too small. I don't know what happens now. I lifted a hand just enough to brush a strand of hair off his forehead. We don't rush, I said. We don't push. We just figure it out together. He exhaled, relieved in a way he didn't hide this time. Then he leaned forward. Not for a kiss. Not for anything bold or risky. Just until his forehead rested lightly against mine. A touch that was nothing and everything. A touch that didn't cross a line. A touch that rewrote one. When Jack leaned his forehead against mine, I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I just breathed, letting the warmth of him sink into me, letting the quiet between us turn into something solid, something we didn't have to run from anymore. His breaths were slow, steady, almost matching mine. For the first time since the kiss, he wasn't pulling back. He wasn't doubting himself. He wasn't fighting whatever this was. He was choosing it, choosing me. After a long moment, He drew in a breath and pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes. Not nervous, just open in a way he hadn't let himself be before. "Jaden," he said softly, "I don't want to be scared of this anymore." My heart clenched, not from fear, but from something much deeper. "Then don't be," I whispered. He swallowed. "It's not that easy. I know. But we don't have to pretend it didn't happen. And we don't have to act like it means something bad. It doesn't." He let out a shaky laugh. "You really think that?" "I do," I said. "And I think you do too. You're just not used to letting yourself admit it." Jack looked down at his hands like they were the most confusing things he'd ever seen. "I've never been this close to someone I wasn't supposed to be close to." He shook his head lightly, like trying to clear fog. "All my life I kept things in boxes. Who I was supposed to be, what I was allowed to feel, what would make people proud of me." His voice dropped. "But tonight, none of those boxes fit anymore." He looked back up, and the honesty in his eyes was almost overwhelming. "With you," he said, "I don't feel like I'm doing something wrong. I feel like I'm finally doing something real." I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't know how, but because anything I said would have broken the moment. He was saying everything I'd been afraid to hope for. Jack shifted a little closer on the couch. Not touching yet, but near enough that I felt the air move between us. "You didn't push me," he said. "You didn't take advantage. You didn't expect anything." He breathed out. "That matters more than I can explain." "Jack, you don't have to explain anything." "I want to," he said quickly. "I need you to know where my head is. Because the last thing I want is to hurt you or confuse you or make you think I'm just experimenting or something." My chest tightened. Not from worry, but from the way he cared enough to say all this. "I don't think that," I said softly. "You should know," he continued, "that when I kissed you, that wasn't confusion. That wasn't a mistake." His voice lowered. "It was something I've probably been avoiding for a long time." That confession hit me harder than the kiss itself. I didn't touch him yet. I waited, let him guide this the way he needed to. "Jaden," he said slowly, "I don't know what this makes me. I don't know what it means about who I am. But I know how I feel when I'm with you. And that's enough for right now." I felt something warm and heavy in my chest. Something I hadn't let myself feel around him before. "Hope." "Jack," I said, voice softer than I intended. "Being honest is what matters. Not the label." He nodded, relief flickering through his expression. "And I want to keep being honest," he said. "Not just with you, but with myself." He hesitated. Then he shifted closer. His knee brushed mine. Not an accident. Something inside him settled when he didn't pull away. I let my breath out slowly. "Can I touch you?" I asked quietly. Jack's eyes softened. "Yeah," he whispered. "Please." So I did. I lifted my hand and let my fingertips rest lightly against his forearm. He inhaled sharply, not from surprise, but from the way even that tiny touch seemed to ground him. He looked down at my hand like it was something he'd been wanting but didn't know how to ask for. "No more shame," he murmured. "No more hiding," I said. He nodded once, firm. "No more acting like I don't want this." And then, before I could react, his hand slid over mine. Slow, deliberate, careful. His thumb brushed my skin, and the simple movement sent a shiver up my arm. I'd never felt anything like it. "I never do this," he said softly. "I never let myself feel anything like this with anyone. I shut it down every time." "But not tonight," I whispered. "No," he said. "Not tonight." He looked at me again, the kind of look that said he was stepping into something unknown, something big, something he was scared of but willing to face. "For the first time," he said quietly, "I don't want to run." I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until that moment. Jack slid even closer until our shoulders touched. Heat passing between us like a quiet promise neither of us had to say out loud. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, I'm better than okay." His eyes dropped briefly to my lips, but I shook my head gently. "We don't have to rush," I said. "I know," he whispered, "but I also don't want to pretend it didn't happen. The kiss, the moment, all of it. I'm not asking you to pretend," I said. "I'm asking you to let tonight be what it is. Something real, something new, something we don't have to be ashamed of." Jack closed his eyes for a moment, like he was letting the words sink deep. When he opened them again, he looked different, steady, certain. He lifted one hand slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, and touched the side of my face with the gentlest pressure. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, warm and soft and careful. "Jaden," he said quietly, "I don't know where this goes. I don't know what tomorrow looks like, but I want there to be a tomorrow. With me. With you." The words hit with a warmth that spread through my whole chest. I turned my face slightly into his hand. "Then we'll take it one day at a time." He nodded. "I can do that." We sat there for a long moment, the quiet wrapping around us like a blanket. The room felt warmer, softer, like the tension that used to sit between us had finally turned into something gentle. Then Jack let out a small laugh, half embarrassed. "What?" I asked. "I don't know," he said. "I just keep thinking. If someone told me yesterday that I'd be sitting here like this, touching you, talking about feelings like some open human being, I would have laughed." He met my eyes. "Now it feels like the first thing in a long time that actually makes sense." I smiled. "Good." He squeezed my hand gently. "Jaden, I don't want this to be just a moment. It's not." He nodded again, that small smile tugging at his mouth, the one he almost never let anyone see. "So," he whispered, "where does this leave us?" I leaned my shoulder against his. "Right here," I said. "Starting something new." Jack breathed out slowly, like he'd been waiting to hear those words without knowing it. "No more shame?" he asked softly. "No more shame," I promised. He rested his head lightly against mine, and for the first time all night, there was no tension, no fear, just two people finally letting themselves be honest, finally letting something real begin, something new.